Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to present our best tools in the Orioles farm system for both hitters and pitchers. It's been a while, so we're certainly looking forward to breaking that down on this episode, which is brought to you by IQ Bar, our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom coffees are a delicious, low-sugar brain and body fuel you need to win your day. The Ultimate Sampler Pack is a great way to try all IQ Bar products and flavors. You get 9 IQ Bars, 8 IQ Mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. All IQ Bar products are clean label certified, entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial ingredients. All IQ Bar products are packed with clean, delicious ingredients that keep you physically and mentally fit, like magnesium, lion's mane, and more. With over 25,000 five-star reviews and counting, more people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyles with IQ Bar's brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom coffees. Their Ultimate Sampler Pack includes all 3. IQ Bars become part of my daily routines, whether it's starting my morning with IQ Joe, grabbing an IQ Bar or IQ Mix to refuel or rehydrate after a hard workout. And right now, IQ Bar is offering our special podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products, including the Ultimate Sampler Pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text MLB to 64,000. Text MLB to 64,000. That's MLB to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. And as we like to do at the top of every episode, we want to welcome some new members to our Patreon community. And if you're joining our Patreon community now, you can go back and access not only our June Top 50 Prospects Countdown episode, but you would have had early access to the Kobe Perez interview that came on our podcast feed earlier this week. And to welcome the new members of our community, I will let Bob take the honor.
Yes, I am scared to switch tabs because of audio issues, but off the top of my head, Caden's uncle, welcome to the single A level. Year up front. Always appreciate the support. Any support is greatly appreciated. And the other one was, help me out, guys, another single A full year patron that signed up that we sincerely appreciate, but I don't want to mess up the audio. Zach, do you have it?
Yes, we do. So it was John Aspen who signed up for single year at low A, and we also had a new one join the other day, Christopher, at the double A level.
Oh, perfect.
So you can join our Patreon community for as little as $3 a month, or also $5 and $10 levels, and that will give you access to a number of perks, including early access in some cases to interviews, as well as monthly updates to the top 50, bonus weekly coverage from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as access to Patreon-exclusive channels within our Discord community. So be sure to check that out over on Patreon.com. And on tonight's episode, we thought we would break down players as judged by their tools, and that's going across the 5 tools for hitters, which is best hit tool, best power, best fielding, best speed, and best arm. And then we're going to break down 4 for pitchers: fastball, changeup, command, and secondary pitch. And that's going to kind of be the catch-all category for curveballs, sliders, sweepers, pitches of that variety. And before we get into that, though, I just want to reflect on the interview we had with Kobe Perez, which, if you're watching this live, you've not seen that yet. But if you're listening to this in an audio podcast, it was released earlier this week. Kobe joined us for the first time in a few years to help us break down the players that are in the Dominican Summer League for the Orioles this season. The DSL season got underway at the beginning of last week, and to talk a little bit more about the development of some players that have been part of recent classes. I just want to start with Nick here. What were your thoughts on that interview?
Yeah, great as always. Love talking about that level of the minor leagues just because it's new, and you kind of get to get in early on these guys and figure out that's one of the most fun exercises for me all year, to be honest, in doing this show, is especially now that we get access to be able to watch more Dominican Summer League games. I enjoy going through and watching and noting velos and stuff, and taking the reports that we know ahead of time and kind of matching all that together with the eye test and trying to guess who's going to pop. And so to be able to talk about that with Kobe Perez is always awesome. I just think my biggest takeaway from it was just his kind of preaching what we've been talking about a lot this year, is more and more international prospects are on our top 50 list. They're rising. It's not just quantity, it's also the quality of international prospects continues to grow year over year. But him preaching that patience aspect when it comes to these guys, and never giving up too early on them, because you don't know when things are going to change on a dime. Like a Yubar Cartaya finding some control in high A, and now look, he's getting mentions of potential top 100 status. No one would have guessed that 2 years ago if we would have just continued to look at the walk rate and kind of ignore him there. But yeah, just good to hear somebody in his position with his experience kind of continue to preach that and remind us about that.
Yeah, I like that as well. I mean, it is so fun to watch these guys. Nearly impossible task, but we're up for it. Try to figure these things out and constantly learning and evolving our process. But yeah, being patient. These these kids are signing at 16, 17 years old for the most part. They could be developing for 6-7 years, and they're still only like early 20s, which is like when players come out of the draft out of college a lot of times. So yeah, just be patient. If a player hasn't hit it on all cylinders by the age of 21, they're not a bust. Potential. I mean, they might be, but we just don't know yet. They could very well evolve. And Kobe Perez is so good at what he does, and you can see why just talking to him. Very easy to talk to, very good conversation. Can't wait for people to hear it. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, as always.
Yeah, we were certainly happy to have him back on. And to get us started on the conversation about best tools, what I'll do is I'll just go down each of the categories, talk about who we picked, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more here. And we'll start with best hit tool, because we each had a different player for this category. I picked Nate George. Nick went with Jaden Loray, who certainly showed an impressive hit tool in the FCL. That got him a recent promotion to Delmarva. While Bob went with Peyton Neals, who had been in the Twins system up until an offseason trade that sent him to the Orioles in exchange for catcher Alex Jackson. The good bat-to-ball skills have been noted with Eels at the time of the trade, and he's putting up good numbers right now in AAA Norfolk. So we kind of run the gamut here. A guy that really burst on the scene last year in George, although he's currently on the IL at Frederick. Someone who, up until a few weeks ago, had yet to appear in a professional game in Loray, and then in Eels, someone whose professional career actually began in indie ball before he was picked up by the Twins. And I'll start with Bob here, because I was kind of surprised to see Eels on this list, but I think that there is some evidence, not to mention some data this year at Norfolk, that kind of backs this up.
Yeah, I mean, it was an off-kilter pick, and that's what happens when I'm the last one to make my selections. I see what you guys picked, and I mean, if it's obvious, I will go along with the crowd, but I want to, more names in the mix, more shout-outs we can give, and you guys had awesome picks, but I think Eels, at his size, 5'6", to be able to be at the level he's at with his size, and you got to have a great hit tool to even make it this far. And not to mention the fact he strikes out less than 20% of the time. He walks almost 20% of the time. And sure, the stature helps on that. Strike zone matter, but you still got to put the bat on the ball. Yeah, I just really liked. It's such a shame that he's back on the injury list, because, man, if he was healthy all year, I wonder if he would have been in Baltimore already by now, because he's shown a lot when he's been on the field. He's been very productive. Yeah, he can get the bat on the ball, and that's what this tool is all about. We're not talking about power or anything else. Just, can you make contact frequently enough to be a productive hitter? And I think he has proven that at the AAA level. He hasn't had a chance to prove it at the major league level yet, but that's my pick.
Yeah, I also, maybe for some of these aren't necessarily the best, but they're very good, and they very well could be the best. But I also think I'm phrasing it as like my favorite as well. So that mixing it there with my decisions, because some of these are very like there is a very clear answer, and we got a lot of the same answers with the bats, but it definitely varies with the pitchers, which is going to make it even more fun. But the hit tool, like I went with Jaden Loray just again to bring him up again, and now that we've got a little bit larger of a sample size, we can talk about him a little bit more. It's just, actually, if you go to Fangraphs and filter by their list, they have 5 guys in the system with the 55 future value hit tool. And it's Bradfield, Miguel Rodriguez, Peyton Neals, Loray, and Gabriel Rosario, the 2026 international signing, actually, which is fun to see there. But Luray is only in single A right now. And it's only been, a week worth of games. So very small sample. There's only a couple of weeks down there in the FCL. So the lowest levels of the minor leagues in a small sample size. But to back up this really good hit tool claim is he's running a 2.1% swinging strike rate, which is absurd. And to compare that to some other guys with many more at bats, Braylon Whitaker's at 4.9%. Ben Cosme is at 7.1%. Peyton Eels at 8.1%. Those are three of the top guys in the system this year. And Jaden Luray is blowing them away in that category. But just the whole thing, he's done a good job of using the entire field. Pull rate, opposite field, up the middle, he's hitting it all. Good hard hit percentage, like the max EVs that we did get in the FCL. Maybe they weren't the highest, but the hard hit rate was 40, 50%, I believe. I think it was 50% in StatCast games in the FCL. So he's consistently hitting the ball hard. 14% walk rate, he's got a 7% strikeout rate, and he's also just one of the better bats at keeping the ball off the ground too. So a lot of line drives and keeping the ball in the air where that power will hopefully start to shine through a little bit. But it was just funny because I distinctly remember the draft broadcast because I'll give shout out to MLB Pipeline during the draft broadcast. Nobody's going to have off the top of their head or even in their encyclopedia of research ahead of time. There's a lot of players and some obscure players, and Jaden Luray coming out of the Arizona high school ranks. I mean, the D1 college guys are hard enough, but they rely on the scouts. They plead on the broadcast, hey, if you hear one of your guys that you scouted, shoot me a text and I'll read it off on air. And I think the text they got was he should go to BYU and focus on the hit tool. But everybody who went out to Arizona and saw him raved about the hit tool, and we're starting to see that here. I wish we could break this down more by specific pitches, but in the data that we do have, I think Jaden Luray is doing a lot to kind of separate himself here.
If you didn't pick him, I was going to. Shout out, Jaden, if you're listening. I know you're paying attention to our list. Hey, hat tip to you, man. You are living up to what you talked about in your interview. I have loved what I've seen from him since he got to – it's been a week, but you combine the StatCast data with 1 week of play, and I like that you can just see the evolution even in just this limited amount of time, because when FCL season started, he wasn't striking out, but he wasn't walking a lot either. Now you're seeing more walks. You're seeing that hanging curveball. He just, boom, pulled it right over, showed off good power on that home run. He's already outbeat Nate George with pulled home runs, so that's good. The more I see of him, the more I think he's a straight-up dude in this organization, and huge up arrow. Love the pick.
When I started to think about who I was going to pick for this category, it's all right, there's a lot of players in the mix, but I didn't think there was a clear front runner. And it actually came down for me to Nate George and Ike Iris, who I have a feeling we'll be talking about a little bit more later on. But with George, what I looked at and I thought is his age and the adjustments to the hit tool that we were already seeing before he went on the IL at Frederick. We knew the bat-to-ball skills were really good. We know that he rarely swung and missed last year. And while the strikeouts were up a tick before he went on the IL, they had actually been trending downward a little bit. He had really started to get going at the plate before he went on the IL last month. And one other thing, too, is that I think the power was starting to come through there. So in addition to those good bat-to-ball skills, the ability to kind of line the ball over the field, he was getting his line drive rate up. The pull side power was coming through a little bit more. So I started to think about, with the base that he has now, how good could he be in 2 or 3 years? And that's kind of how I graded it out. But I think that, as our picks reflect, and I think that you both made good picks, there's not really a clear-cut way to answer this question.
No, that's true. And if I can shout out former guests of the show, Oyster Analytics, these are the type of prospects that they've talked about. If you're following their Substack this year, these pop-up breakout prospects are these young guys at advanced levels for their age that show great contact ability, and just if you can keep that up, the power is going to come as you add strength as you get a little bit older. And I think both of these guys, Nate George and Jaden Luray, obviously Peyton Heels is already 25, 26, but I think they have a chance, and it's no lock for sure. But as they get into their early 20s and get towards the upper minors, I think these are guys that could really just pop off.
We'll go over now to the power tool, which, as a little bit of a spoiler here, this is the last area where there was any disagreement between us with the hitters. So I'll start with with our power. Nick and I both had Victor Figueroa, while Bob had Tomas Sosa. So before we get into Figueroa, which I know Nick and I will talk about here in a moment, Bob, give us your thoughts on Sosa.
Yeah, it's funny. I pick a guy who's got, what, 2-3 home runs this year? Oh, 4. Okay, not too bad. But it's not about the in-game power for me. It's just that raw power that we have seen in-game, maybe not consistently, but I'm going to go back to that Kirby Perez interview and preaching patience. I think Thomas Sosa is a guy that when it clicks, it's really going to click. And I think we're seeing a lot of good signs. We've talked about it a lot this year where strikeout rate has come down. He's had some bad luck with batted ball, BABIP, but when he connects, he can send it 450 feet, 110 plus miles per hour. So, yeah, Victor Figueroa, tremendous pick. Obviously, 15 home runs, and he's a big boy, hits the ball hard and far. But Thomas Sosa, I just feel like if you're going to go by max distance, I think Thomas Sosa is your guy.
When he connects, for one, he leaves very little doubt. Him and Aaron Estrada, it's if both of those guys are swinging the bat perfectly, they might be two of the more beautiful swings and just balls that rocket out of a ballpark that you'll find in the organization. But yeah, I went with Victor Figueroa. If my internet can stay stable, I clicked on Baseball Reference and my computer almost crashed. Shout out Fangraphs. Victor Figueroa for me, like I know the home runs are happening at this insane rate in the minor leagues right now. So like just the raw home run total maybe can be a little misleading here. I think it was Baseball America did a whole dive into this. I think Rates and Barrels might have touched on this earlier this week too, or last week as well. But there's discussion about what is going on in the minor leagues with all of these home runs. It is insane. So yes, Frederick is homer friendly, it's hitter friendly, but it's not just a Frederick thing. When you're looking at these home run totals, it is across, especially the lower levels of minor league baseball this year. But Figueroa had 12 home runs last year, his first year of pro ball. He's already has 15 now. He was 15th on Sunday, I believe, in about half the at-bats, a little more than half the at-bats this year. So he's pulling the ball more this year, but he's still a guy who uses the entire field. I think his last home run was like an opposite field home run, one that I think that was the one where he even had to like dig down and dig the ball out, and he still was able to pick it up and drive it out the other way. He could have just sat there and drove a nice little line drive or just try to just bloop it over shortstop or third base. No, he had the grown man strength because he is a big boy. He's a very large human being, and able to drive that opposite field in a no-doubter was a lot of fun to see. And he's been doing that all year. And I will say, I know we've talked about this a lot, like the contact rate, right? It's a sub 60% contact rate. It's not good. It's a near 20% swinging strike rate. It's not good. Defensively, he's first base DH. Like he's not going anywhere else. But I've written about this before where it's a one trick type thing, but that trick is very, very good. And I do think that can be viable at the major league level. And there could be a role for him. And I actually looked I'm not saying he's Joey Gallo. I'm not. But if you go back and look at Joey Gallo's there was a role for him in Major League Baseball for many years. There's a role for that profile
Relief
in
pitcher.
the big leagues. Well, now, yeah. But years ago, he did have a role in the major leagues as a hitter. But his contact rates, the swinging strike rate, stuff like that, were actually worse than Figueroa's when he was in the minor leagues in around the same levels and everything. So when I see that, I see Figueroa 2-3 percentage points better right now, and this is only his first full year in the Orioles system. I'm going to admit I wasn't overly intrigued. Like first base guy with a lot of power, we see this all the time. But I think Figueroa is a little bit different here. And we'll see how that develops over the next year or so.
That's kind of how I felt about Figueroa. And going into this season, I looked at the numbers from a year ago, and it's like, all right, he had solid numbers when you factor in his time between the two organizations, Padres and the Orioles. But the bulk of his production came while he was with the Padres in Low A in the California League, which is notoriously hitter-friendly. And his production completely fell off a cliff after the trade. But I think as we're kind of seeing this year with some of the guys that came over in that deal, some of them thrived right away, and then others, I think it has taken a little bit more time to settle into the organization and make adjustments. as Nick just rattled off there are a lot of reasons to doubt Figueroa's profile across the board because of the concerns about the contact rate and his limited defensive versatility. But the power is for real. That's not some sort of California League Frederick product. He's going to continue to hit for power throughout the minor leagues. It's just a question of whether or not that's going to be enough to offset the other parts of his game that don't profile as, let's say, major league regular quality or even, long-term major league contributor quality.
I think both those guys, I don't know the exact max CVs, but I'm pretty sure both Sosa and Figueroa have touched 114, 115. So raw power is there. You're seeing the game power for Figueroa. Again, I know we've said it for 3 years about Thomas Sosa, but I like Bob said, he keeps showing enough flashes in AA this year. The org has given us enough signs. Still stick behind the Thomas Sosa hype there.
So while we had some differences in our hit and power categories, we had the same players across the board in the speed and defense categories. So it still comes as a little surprise that the best speed in the organization is still Enrique Bradfield Jr. He also was given best field tool unanimously. And then best arm, Judd Fabian won that one. I know that Fabian, I did not get a chance to go back and listen to the last time that we did a best tools episode, but I know we went with Fabian in that episode as well. I'll say here the only real debate I had in trying to decide these categories was between Vahiva Aloy and Enrique Bradfield Jr. for defense. And I almost went with Aloy. But then as I started to think about it more, that center field defense that Bradfield could give you on its own probably provides more value than what Aloy is going to do at shortstop, even though I think that all of the traits for Aloy to be at least an above average, if not plus defender at shortstop are there. The arm strength, the range, the internal clock. And that's going to provide value. But what Enrique Bradfield Jr. can do in center field defensively on its own, not factoring the rest of the game, but just from a pure defensive standpoint, is probably going to provide more value.
As long as he doesn't get hurt crashing into walls, he should be fantastic. He's like Byron Buxton out there in a good way and also potentially in a bad way the last year or so. But yeah, man, what he can do, it's special. We saw it in the AFL. It seemed like with all those people covering those games, you saw highlights every day, at least one of diving, leaping, just chasing balls in the gap. He's special out there. And what I think, obviously, after we talk about EBJ and the main guys that won these categories, maybe since it was so unanimous, we could each come up with our runner-up. Obviously, yours was Aloy, Zach. But, yeah, EBJ is special out there in the field, no doubt about it.
Yeah, just if I were to give you my top 10 favorite baseball players of all time, I would guarantee you 8 of them are those silky smooth center field types, the Kenny Lofton types out there. It's something about that profile of player that I've always enjoyed watching, especially growing up. And I hope we get to see that here in Baltimore, him play that style of defense. And that's what I did for me. If you separate the arm, so just fielding, because he doesn't have the strongest arm. He's not even in consideration for the arm strength category, but just the strictly fielding, reading balls off the bat, closing speed, all of it, it's there. I do like the Aloy pick. If anyone says Vahiva Aloy can't stick at shortstop, just slap him. You don't need to listen to that type of talk. I like Braylon Whitaker. We talked a lot about him, his outfield defense. I really enjoy that kind of his style of play as well. He was not so much in the conversation, but if I had to give a runner up, honestly, I like Brandon Butterworth is a guy that continues to grow me. And I think a lot of that comes from the defense and his ability to hold down the left side of the infield. And that's why I think Butterworth is a guy who I know he's on the IL right now. Hopefully he's back soon, but the bat starting to pick up before the injury. We saw what the bat could do when he got to AA last year in that small sample size, and it's continued this year before the IL stint. But I think that defense gives him a pretty sturdy floor of a guy who's going to could have a pretty long career in pro ball, even if it's a guy you keep around as, AAA depth in case of emergency. Even if it's that type of career, if he wants to be around pro ball for the next 10 plus years, he should have that opportunity, I think.
Yeah, the runner-up, Simpkins probably right. It should probably be Griffo Farrell, but man, I know you're not supposed to bring in hitting, but it's tough in his case. He is pretty special with the glove. He's got the instincts. He knows exactly it's like, again, Kobe Perez said, some guys are just born baseball players, and they have the instincts and they know exactly what to do, when and where, and that's him on defense. I also would like to shout out RJ Austin. He can play a pretty good corner outfield and second base. I know it's not his premier position, but shout out to RJ Austin too.
Yeah, give me the flash. I want the flashiness.
I'll say that for best arm, I actually did consider Tomas Sosa and Braylon Whitaker both. I just have seen a lot more of Fabian over the years, and there's a sort of comfort in experience there, but I think Sosa and Whitaker could both push that. And then for best speed, no one really came close to EBJ for me, but Tavian Josenberger runs really well. It's just unfortunate that between injuries and some offensive struggles at Double-A, that we haven't really seen him get to put that to full use. But he does run really well. Braylon Whitaker runs really well. So there's other players that would be in the mix, but I don't think anybody really comes close to Bradfield.
Agreed. Yeah, Josenberger would have been my runner-up, but EBJ is pretty fast. He's going to steal a lot of bases if he's ever healthy in the majors.
And it's not even just like the stolen bases either. He's career 88% success rate in the minor leagues so far in stolen base attempts, which is great. But I wish we could go back and like track how many times when you're watching him get on first base, how many times does he truly get into the heads of pitchers and you see them make a horrible pickoff throw to first base because they're so concerned about him, or they lose control out there on the mound because they can't focus on the batter. They're constantly looking over and checking in on EBJ, and then he's gone and they spike one, or they throw it away to first base, and next thing you know, he's at third base, and then he's scoring a run, whether it's a ground out, sac fly, whatever it is, he's scoring. You look up, he gets on base via a walk, and you look up, and now he's over at third base. How many times have you seen that with him? And so that speed is just, it is truly electric, and it truly does mess with the pitchers when they're out there on the mound. I know it might be a little bit different when you get to the major leagues. Guys are ready for that, but still, you see guys like what a guy like Chandler Simpson can do in the big leagues and what kind of impact he can have on the game, even though it may not be the flashiest defense, maybe not even good defense, and not much of a hitter per se, although he was really good to begin this year, and he's kind of cooled off as the Rays have. But like there is a role there for EBJ and that speed there. But the arm with Fabian is just, again, how many times do you see runners regret trying to stretch that single into the double because he guns them down? How many plays at the plate has he accumulated? How many plays at third base? It's every base. It's with Fabian, the thing that's so impressive that he does, I think, so much better than probably everyone in the system, to be honest. It's strong, it's accurate, but it's like he envisions exactly what is going to play out before it happens. And so he is ready. He knows he's going to third base. There's no hesitation, none of that most of the time. Like that's something you see a lot of guys, especially younger minor league outfielders, struggle with. Not with Fabian. He knows exactly where he's going, and he's going to get it there on a dot.
And honestly, he's up there as far as just defense in the outfield too. So yeah, it's the accuracy, it's the strength, it's the instincts. Completely agree on Fabian. EBJ, yeah, it's game-changing speed. I bet you next year he'll bunt for at least 12 base hits, and that's with everybody playing him in for a bunt. That's how good his speed is. Then he'll steal second and third and score on a sac fly. Runner-up for me for arm, maybe Nate George. I know he's wild and tumble kind of guy, but I think he showed off a pretty decent arm in what we've seen so far.
He was better this year. He had a couple plays before that IL stint. Just like the hit tool, there was real growth happening. It's really unfortunate that he's going to sit here and miss. He's been out, a month? And who knows when he's going to come back? Unfortunate, but.
We'll go over now to the pitching side of this discussion, and this is where we start to have a lot of differences I think we're going to make for some fun discussions. And I'm going to just jump in with best fastball. 3 different players get the nod here. I had Levi Wells, who was putting up good numbers down AAA Norfolk before recently undergoing core surgery. He's probably going to be out for a while. Eber Cartaya, who is putting up excellent numbers at Frederick, gets the nod from Nick, while Micah Assman, who the Orioles brought over last year, it's a trade deadline from the Tigers and has since emerged as one of the better relief prospects in the organization, gets the nod from Bob. So this is an interesting range of pitchers here and different types of profiles between these 3 guys, but I think that there's all merit. I think there's merit to all 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Levi Wells is electric arm. Gosh, I wish he wasn't getting surgery. We might see him sooner rather than later at the majors. I can't remember off the top of my head who Nick picked.
Cartaya.
Cartaya. Yes. Oh, yeah. After we just heard he's touching 98, 99 miles per hour and changes arm angle, it looks like a much, much better pitch and more accurate with the command. But for me, it was Micah Ashman because it's like the only pitch he throws. Like 70+% of the time, it's the fastball. It's not overwhelming velocity, 93 to 97 when he really ramps it up. But he's got like a 30% swing and strike rate on it. So it's like invisible. It's like the Keegan Hagen invisible fastball, but leveled up even more. So can't wait to see the true numbers on it when he gets to AAA and StatCast, and especially when he gets to the majors. I really think he could be a left-handed weapon, fastball alone. And obviously, I'm sure he's got that slider working on a changeup third show him pitch, but it's that fastball is what's going to make him his money.
He did take down some of America's best with that fastball. Yeah, I went with Cartaya. Just it's the new arm slot. It's better command. You mentioned it's up a couple of ticks, up to 99 now, and it's lively. Like you don't even have to. You watch the feed and you can see the liveliness of that fastball. And we don't have the specific pitch results, but I know Eric Longenhagen at Fangraphs noted in his write-up that the fastball was producing pretty elite whiff rates when he published that piece, and Cartaya's continued to shove since then, so I imagine that those numbers are still holding. I am still cautiously looking ahead with Cartaya. When he gets bumped up to AA, are the walks going to spike again? That's the big issue for me. But when he's made that real mechanical adjustment and it's led to a drop in the walk rate from 15% down to 10%, and actually since May 1st, 6 starts, it's an 8.5% walk rate, which I think was unheard of for Cartaya at any point in his career. 6 starts is a pretty substantial sample size there. He's one of the bigger risers in the system, and I think a lot of that is because of the fastball. And you look at Levi Wells, Zach's pick, and I'll just note on that, the reason why Levi Wells is becoming a guy up until that injury of where this guy, I really think can contribute out of the Major League bullpen this year at some point. It was because of the fastball. And when you look at his StatCast and the more data we have with his pitch mix this year, that fastball was putting up a lot of numbers down there in AAA this year, which was really good to see. So if you have that good fastball foundation, like that's going to take you a lot further.
Yeah, his fastball. Oh, go ahead, Bob.
Oh, I was just going to say, what was it? Almost 20 inches of induced vertical break with like 97 mile per hour almost average velocity. Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah, that was kind of the logic that I had behind my pick. Was just when I looked at that, it's an elite pitch, and the only thing that I think you could really ding Wells on right now is that maybe it doesn't quite generate elite whiffs, even though the rest of it lines up that it should be a true swing and miss pitch. But I don't think it's so much about the fastball as it is about the pitch mix with Wells. And we kind of saw this last year at AA, where he seemed to be more fastball heavy early on in the year, and then as he started to throw his secondaries more often and get them over for strikes more, the fastball became an even more dangerous pitch. And unfortunately, I don't know when we're going to get a chance to see that again at AAA, but I have every reason to believe that at some point that adjustment's going to come through and you'll start to see the whiff numbers go up.
Yeah, it's almost like you saw it at the time of this recording. Trey Gibson started against Mariners and was like 80% fastballs and didn't strike anyone out, but he did produce a lot of ground balls and pitched well until he left with runners on, and we don't need to talk about what happened after that. But like Trey Gibson has to use the fastball to set up his elite breaking stuff. I think Levi Wells is the opposite. He needs to use the breaking stuff to set up that elite fastball. And I think that's the last piece of the puzzle for him. And it seems like, hey, if I could think of it, I'm sure they know about it. Easy fix. It'll be done in no time. Easier said than done. But Levi Wells, great fastball.
I pulled it up here, and comparing his small sample last year, this year, he's 95.8 miles per hour this year, right in line with last year, but he's up to more than 17 inches of induced vertical break. 107 stuff plus, was 106 last year. He's getting 24% whiff on it this year, just 22% last year. Better production. The cutter just got shelled this year. But we've talked about this before. The weird thing is the the four-seam fastball usage went up from 30% to over 51% this year with Levi Wells, but it was still productive, getting good chase, getting decent whiff. So, and he was throwing it for a ton of strikes too. So,
Go over now to best changeup, and I think that this for me was one of the toughest categories to decide. In the end, I went with Joseph Giroux, who is having a breakout season due to a lot of factors, but the changeup, the quality of that pitch being one of them. Nick went with another left-hander with a filthy changeup, and that is Braden Sloan, who has been excellent out of the bullpen between Delmarva and Frederick this year. Bob had the lone right-hander in this group, and that is Nestor Herman, who has just continued to produce out of Norfolk's rotation. You have to think is going to see the big leagues at some point this summer. So this is a good group here. And Nick, I'll start with you because Sloan's, I almost went with Sloan in this category. I was really, for me, a coin toss between Giroux and Sloan. And there's just movement on Sloan's changeup that you don't see a lot of times.
Yeah, and for me, it's just the fact that he was pretty much all changeup in college. And of course, like someone with his size, with that type of changeup, you're going to have success in college. But it was the fact that he went to it so frequently. And once he got to the big leagues, not the big leagues, once he's been into pro ball, though, and it's been single A and high A, he is running a 65.5% ground ball rate, a .92 ERA, 44% strikeout rate, and he's throwing the changeup more than 60% of the time. So it's still like how I don't know how it's going to continue to work when he gets up to double A and hopefully triple A. I hope it does continue, but does he have enough with the rest of the repertoire to continue to get guys out? TBD, but early on in his career, he hasn't changed anything as far as like the changeup usage, and it's still producing a ton of results. So yeah, that's why I went with that one.
It's a cheat code. For me, it was just about, like you said, wanting to see it at double A and above. But right now, yeah, hard to argue against that being one of the best changeups in the system. For me, I went with Nestor Herman because he's a pretty well-rounded pitcher. He's got a solid everything, fastball, slider, curveball. But that splitter, man, I think that's the straw that stirs the drink when it comes to Nestor Herman's pitch mix. I think that helps play up. It helps mitigate splits against lefties. I just think it's his weapon if he has one. And I feel like as you've seen him improve as this year's gone on at AAA, I think the splitter's been a big part of that. And yeah, I think we'll get a taste of it in the majors. Like Zach said, before this season is up, I would have to imagine, especially with now Chris Bassett's on the IL, hopefully for a short stint. But yeah, you're going to need all arms on deck, and Nestor Herman's got a good one.
53% whiff rate with the pitch in AAA and a 203 expected WOBA. So pretty good, I think.
Giroux's changeup has been noted as a plus offering going back to his days in Michigan State. And as I started to think about that a little bit more, it's like, all right, I really like what that pitch can do in his arsenal out of the rotation. Because as we've seen the slider come along more this year and we see him be as efficient as he is, the more I believe that he is going to stick as a starter long term. The other thing is that with his arm action and the way that the ball comes out of his hand, the hitters just can't pick it up. And that's really the key differentiator for me with a lot of changeups is how does it look compared to the fastball coming out of your hands? And I think what Giroux has been successful at so far this season and maybe even longer if you want to include his days at Michigan State is just putting in, I don't want to say deception because I don't want people to think that Giroux was like a crafty lefty because he's not. But there's enough of kind of changing eye levels with hitters, mixing some different things in to make it difficult for them to differentiate the fastball and the changeup.
I was just going to say, yeah, Giroux, the fun note about Giroux's changeup that I hadn't noticed, but I think Baseball America did a piece where they kind of broke down his one of his high A starts before he got promoted to double A, and they noted the changeup. He's able to like create different shapes with it. Like if he just wants to get a strike, he throws one version of the changeup, and then when he's got two strikes and he wants to finish off the hitter, he's got another one with even more tumble. And so like that's his ability to do that is just, again, you don't fall in love with pitching prospects. I know, but it's getting harder and harder every time Giroux goes out there and takes the mound.
He's got the attributes of that crafty lefty that needs that edge to make it but he's got the quality of pitches of a legit left-handed, like middle of the rotation plus starter. So, best of both worlds. Love the pick.
And that's a good segue to best command because this is actually an area where a pitcher was mentioned by two of us. Jirwa was recognized by Bob and I as having the best command in the system. Nick, meanwhile, went with another left-hander who has put up phenomenal walk totals in the farm system this year, and that's Sebastian Gongora. And since we just kind of broke down Jirwa a lot, talked about his changeup and his command, I want to start with Nick here just to give a little bit more background on Gongora.
Yeah, and it's more like going with the command was hard because we don't have that pitch data for players below AAA. And so it was hard for me to sit here. All right, I think my pick was more control. So acknowledging that the difference between control and command, obviously, but so I went with Gongora and with more of the focus on the control there. Fangraphs does give Gongora a 50 future value command grade, so that's nothing to sneeze at there. But I believe that was top 3 too, according to Eric Longenhagen's grades as far as command goes in the system. But the walks, like you mentioned, a 12% walk rate last year. It's now down to 5.3%, all in AA this year. And actually, if there are 39 pitchers in the Eastern League with 40 or more innings this year, Gongora ranks 3rd in walk rate. So this just, I've been a big fan of Gongora since the draft. I thought that was a pretty solid pick, and it was aided by the hints that he can touch 97. I don't think we've seen anything close to that in game yet, but I know there's been a lot written about how they've slowed the entire operation down. And he doesn't need to go 97 from the left side because of his deep mix, because of his control that has taken off this year. You're seeing what he's been able to produce at the AA level this year. Even someone who is as high on Gongora as I have been for a long time, I did not expect him to be producing this well at the AA level this year.
Yeah, it's obviously been great command for Gongora. The only reason I went with Giro, not only because he just has great command as well, but he has more of a history for it. And I'm hoping, and I think Gongora could be this guy moving forward, but I don't know. I need longer to know after the 12% from last year.
The history factored in for me as well in picking Jirwa, but Gongora was definitely in the mix. And the way that he's improved his command so far this year, I feel like he's not really taking anything off the gas pedal. Yeah, he's probably not hitting his max fastball velocity as often in starts, but when you see him working more efficiently and cutting down the walks, that's a good trade-off. Because I felt like that was a problem when he got to Aberdeen last year, was he would have these starts where he was really good, and then he have others where one bad inning where he couldn't locate his pitches would just lead to the whole start unraveling. And he's really not had those kind of situations at all this year.
No, you're absolutely right. He's been very consistent, and yeah, hats off to him. I still think I've heard people say that the stuff isn't great, but he's making. I think the stuff is better than people are saying. I can't wait till he gets to AAA, probably next year, to see the actual numbers. But I don't know. I think he's got a decent enough changeup and curveball. If he can tick up the fastball 1 or 2, I think we're talking about legit top 15 prospect in the system.
And he's got that option too, where I feel like it would not be very difficult if you were to put him in shorter stints, if you were to move him to the bullpen down the road, that he could sit 95. He could touch that 97 potentially, but yeah, you don't throw 54 innings in AA this year with a 3.3 ERA, FIP and XFIP all in line. Those walks, those strikeout numbers, the ground ball, all of it. Like, you don't put up that kind of production if the stuff sucks. It's pretty good stuff.
We'll go over now to the last pitching category, which is the best secondary pitch. And this is kind of a catch-all for all breaking balls. I went with Trey Gibson's death ball, which has been described in some news reports as a combination of a slider, curveball, and knuckleball, others as a gyro slider, but it's been a very effective weapon for him throughout his professional career. Nick went with Luis De Leon's slider, another very good pitch. And then Bob went with Boston Bateman's slider, I believe. Is that right, Bob? So Boston Bateman's slider gets the nod from Bob. So 3 different pitchers again. Here, although we're all kind of focusing on sliders, or in my case, a slider type pitch with Gibson, And Nick, I'll start with you on this one. De Leon, that pitch mix gets a lot of attention because the fastball velo from the left side is as good as it is. The changeup has graded out very well in some reports, but I think we've known for a while now the slider has a chance to be truly elite.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at that pitch alone, it was. And if you go back, we do have some very, very limited numbers on him that we can look at a little bit more. But in the Arizona Fall League, so again, just raw slider here, it was a 107 stuff plus. He used it 40% of the time in the AFL, got a 33% chase and a 44% whiff rate. And actually, he got some time in spring 2025. Again, very small samples here, but the slider was a 104 stuff plus, and then it jumped up to a 105 stuff plus, and now it's jumped up to the 107 stuff plus. So that continues to grow. And this year in spring training, he threw 15 of them, and he generated a 50% chase and 38% whiff rate in spring training this year. So like we've seen the progression of the slider. We know that's a very good offering of his. We know commanding the offering, commanding everything, the command and control there continues to wane and goes in and out with him. We've talked a lot about De Leon, but we even talked about him, I think, last week in one of the episodes where are we concerned about the slow start, to kind of zoom out a little bit more there with De Leon. And I'll just say, like, it was encouraging to, again, spoiler with the Kobe Perez interview, it was encouraging to hear him talk about Luis De Leon and say specifically, acknowledge the box scores haven't been great, but they still are very much in love with the stuff. And I think the slider is going to be a big reason why, if he were to reach the big leagues this year, or if it's next year, either way, if and when he does reach the big leagues, a big reason for his success is going to be because of that slider.
Yeah, absolutely. And I went with Boston Bateman just because I think he's a breakout pitcher this year. I've talked about it on my weekly recap for patrons that, in this offseason, it was like he didn't really feel like a true Orioles prospect yet because we just acquired him. He didn't do anything special. So I'm throwing him in every trade package I can think of. And now already I'm like, we can't trade this guy. We cannot trade Boston Bateman because, yeah, he's got a great fastball that's got up to 97, 98 this year. But I think that slider has really gained consistency. And he's basically been fastball slider mixing in a changeup that he's working on. But that slider, I think, has been the big difference this year as far as his production at the high A level at only, 20 years old. So, yeah, really, really like the way the slider has worked for Boston Bateman.
Yeah, that's a good call on both of those pitchers. With Gibson, I'll just say that I think what we've seen throughout his career is that the death ball is probably his put-away pitch. I know that he's talked about this in various interviews where he feels like it's the pitch that he can go to with two strikes. And what seems to make it work well is that if hitters get a hold of it, they're just going to pound it into the ground. Now, if you look at the StatCast data, it's a little bit tough to come up with a precise reading on it because from what I've seen, most StatCast readings on it have labeled it as a slider. But right now, you look over at TJ Stats, the Stuff Plus model there gives the slider a 106 in the big leagues. So that's over a very limited sample size, but the numbers in Norfolk have been very good with the slider as well. So something to keep an eye on there because I think that Gibson is going to have to be a sinker slider type of pitcher, but it could work and it could allow him to generate a lot of swings and misses. In fact, look at the slider down in Norfolk this year, 33.3% whiff rate, 47.8% chase rate. The Stuff Plus down there grading out at 105 according to TJ Stats. So good results from that pitch. It's something that is really vital to his arsenal, and it's frankly just a lot of fun to watch.
And a lot of fun to say. It's a death ball. No, it's a really good pitch. I love the death ball. It's a shame he didn't get to throw it much Monday night against the Mariners, but it is a fantastic pitch. I'm sure we'll be seeing a ton of it over the next 5, 6, 7 years.
Absolutely hope to see that. And now we will head into our final segment of the night. Last call brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing, located at 1421 Ridley Street. Checker Spot is not far from Camden Yards, making it the perfect place for a pre- or post-game drink. And if you haven't done that this year, or you've already done it and you're looking forward to doing it again, I don't know there's going to be a better time to have a pre- or post-game visit to Checker Spot this season, at least in the first half of the season, than on Saturday when they celebrate their 8th anniversary. It's going to be an all-day event from 12 p.m. to 10 p.m. Be sure to check out Checker Spot's social media for more details on that. But even if you can't make it Saturday or the Orioles happen to be out of town, when you're in the area, Checker Spot is still a great place to watch the game because they are open 7 days a week with plenty of good food and drinks, as well as a lot of TVs to check out the action. So be sure to head over to Checker Spot Brewing at 1421 Ridgely Street in South Baltimore. And now we'll have this part of the discussion with our best tools, which is that obviously we can't cover every player that we want to cover with this. And sometimes there are players who happen to be really good prospects that are just solid across the board, but maybe you don't look at their individual tools or the individual parts of their game as being the best within the farm system. And I think on both the hitter and pitcher side, we could probably come up with answers, but I'll give you guys a little bit of leeway in terms of how many players you want to name here. And I'll start off with Bob.
I have a list of 20. No, I'll do it. One hitter and one pitcher. I call this the Nick Markakis effect on the hitting side, and I'm going to go with our number one prospect, Ike Irish, just because I think he's got super solid hit tool. He's starting to hit for some power, getting that loft in the game there. He can play pretty solid corner outfield, I think, and first base. I think he's not a slow runner, not a fast runner, and he's got a decent arm. Not a great arm, not a terrible arm. So he's just that perfect five-tool player at the moment, and maybe that's why he's the safe pick to be our number one, but it's a good pick. Oh, and for pitcher, I'm going to say it's someone who hasn't pitched this year, hasn't pitched in about a year now, Braxton Bragg. I think when he's healthy, I mean, it's not all average. I think almost everything he does is above average, but I don't think there's that one thing that is like plus dominant. Like he's got a good fastball, he's got good command, he's got a good breaking ball, good changeup. None would probably win an award for best of, but when you put it all together, I think it's one of the best packages there are, as long as he has kept it through the surgery and rehab process.
I'll throw out a hitter that Ike Irish is the obvious one there, just because it's there. Like you said, there may not be the elite tool, but across the board, it's all there, and why he shouldn't spend too much time in the minor leagues. But shout out to him for hitting that home run too the other day, his first since getting hit in the wrist there. So I know he's cooled off. No reason to be concerned about cooling off there when you got hit. I'm sure that had some lingering effects. But I want to go with a guy who maybe he's not showing it quite yet, but maybe a preview for next year when we do this episode, a guy we may be talking about. And I'm going to go with Wilfred De La Cruz. I'm stuck on Wilfred De La Cruz lately, and I'm fine with that. 18-year-old switch hitter. And if you look at, again, referencing Fangraphs future value grades, it's 45 hit, 55 power, 55 speed, 50 field. Like, this is a guy who across the board, there's a lot to like. And you're starting to see him put up the results in the FCL over the last couple of weeks. The hit tool is even, I know Ben Bather wrote about this, how that first year the strikeouts were a lot fewer strikeouts than what he anticipated in pro ball. And so I wonder if that's going to help the hit tool progress a little bit. I know there's been good contact rates down there in the lower levels of the minor leagues as well. I think he's surprising people with the amount of contact that he's able to make. I just feel like everything written about Wilfred De La Cruz from the time he signed with the Cubs until now, it's always like, we didn't expect it to be this good. Didn't expect that to be this good. Oh, it's really surprising us here. And it's with more and more like different tools as well that people are writing about. So I don't know. I'm in. A guy with some big power, a guy with good speed, can handle multiple positions on the left side of the infield. I'm waiting for the Wilfred De La Cruz breakout.
I like the pick. Yeah, I think he'll be up in Delmarva, maybe after the FCL season, but I'm excited to get a real good look at him. You could also call this player the I think you should leave drive-through skit award, where it's 55 power, 55 hit, 55 speed, 55. But yeah, Wilfred De La Cruz. He's a fun guy.
I like that in my prospects. Good across the board.
For my hitter, I agree. It's Ike Irish. I mean, it's just solid across the board. There wasn't that one elite tool, but if you want to look at who has a really safe profile of a big leaguer, I think Ike Irish is your guy. One player that kind of in the vein of Nick's pick for the hitters that I want to shout out is Steven Martinez. I've got some real questions about his contact and the swing, as I've talked about before. I think has a lot of moving parts to it. It's gotten better, but it still needs a little bit of work. But the power is starting to come through at Delmarva this year. And even if he spends all year in Delmarva and the batting average, let's say, is somewhere in the 230s, the strikeout totals are high, but he gets the home run numbers up, he gets the walk numbers up, and the WRC plus and ISO are in line with what you would want to see. I think you could call that a reasonable success for an 18-year-old who really struggled with his first taste of low A last year. And, he could kind of be in the same conversation with Victor Figueroa this time next year where, there are questions about the all-around game, but the power is for real. And I could see that for Martinez. And then with pitching, I know that a lot has been said about the shape of the fastball, but JT Quinn's fastball, to me, I think it's going to get better. I don't know if I don't want to say it's an overreaction to some of the data that has been leaked out, but I just can't think that a guy that throws that hard, who has been that successful this year against pro hitting, is all of a sudden just going to lose with the fastball because the pitch is too flat and it doesn't have enough shape. I think he's going to make the adjustment, and it might take a little while, but there will come a point, I feel like, in the next year or two where he's in the mix for best fastball, especially as he has more time in the Orioles farm system. They're able to work on that a little bit more.
I just think that a sinker is a fastball too. He might have not the greatest four-seamer. He might just lean sinker heavy, which I think, from looking at the data, the sinker looks pretty strong, and I think he throws that more than the four-seam. So I do think it's a little bit – I think it's accurate and also overblown at the same time, because in this day and age, you need at least 2-3 fastballs to even work, and I think the sinker is a very effective pitch for him.
Yeah, I'll just say it again. They drafted him knowing what the pitch shapes were. I think, I can't remember who was talking about this recently. Like even when they draft for us as fans, like we don't have access to the high school data and the high school stats, and we don't have access to a lot of the college data, even though it's becoming more and more available. And people are doing a lot of great work with the college data and making it more publicly available. But like even at the high school level, like the teams have pro teams are able to like model that out down the road, what it's going to look like. They're not going into it blind at all. So like they drafted JT Quinn knowing everything there is to know about his pitch mix, and you have to know there is going to be a plan in place for JT Quinn. So yeah, I almost went with JT Quinn for a couple of the secondary offerings because they stand out pretty well. But yeah, I like the JT Quinn pick.
And with that does it for this week. So we will be back next week. In the meantime, you can check out our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, YouTube, and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to our Patreon community and sign up to become a member at the $3, $5, or $10 levels, where we have access to bonus weekly coverage from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list, early access in some cases to interviews, and access to patron-exclusive channels in our Discord community. So be sure to check that out over at patreon.com. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.